Hey everyone, Jono here, and welcome to the install video for the GPStar 2. Now, this video isn't so much a definitive install video and more of a suggestive guide. Why? Well, because unlike the HasLab or Hasbro packs, this is meant to cover all sorts of different packs. So we're talking Spirit Halloween, Halloween costumes, fiberglass shells, 3D printed packs, scratch build packs, your wife's purse, you name it. While the outer shell may be different, leading to where or how you mount things, the components and wiring are always the same. So what's on the docket today? First, we're going to do a quick run through of mounting it on the inside of the shell, and then a very thorough walkthrough of mounting to the motherboard, because that's how I plan to do my pack. And then some modifications based on my own personal preferences. After all, no Proton pack is alike, and as we say here in Burger King, you can have it your way. Alright, first thing we're going to do is load the SD card with the sound effects. So you can go ahead and tear this apart and pop this baby into your PC or Mac. Okay, so on the GPStar website, click on Support and Downloads. Then scroll down to latest firmware releases, and we're going to find the latest sound effect files for your board. So this is the GPStar board. So click download, download again, download one more time. And once that's done downloading, you can open up the zip file, highlight everything, and drag it over to your SD cards, which in my case is the D drive. And once that's done, take your SD card out. And for now, put it somewhere safe where you know you won't lose it. We'll get back to it later on. Now consider how you want to mount your pack. I plan to use the GPStar mounts that are provided by Michael. You can buy it from his website or download it off the Github repository. So let's go ahead and mount these first. So I'm just going to use some M3 screws. 2 should be fine. You can use 4 if you want. And same with the amp board. It also uses some M3 screws. And then for the audio board, they actually use M2 screws. And I've already done that here, as you can see. Alternatively, if you're planning to mount your 6000 milliamp Talentcell battery to the inside of the motherboard, you can use these mounting brackets for your Talentcell. And if you want to take advantage of the vertical space and keep things compact, you can stick on this optional mounting board. And you can mount your pack and your GPStar audio board to the top. The shell that I will be using to demonstrate this install process is a QPack Mark 3.1. But once again, I want to reiterate that this install method applies to any type of Proton pack shell. The only difference really is just what the inside looks like and how much space there is, and that will determine where you're going to be placing the components. Okay, so the first way of mounting things, and if you're new to mounting stuff in a Proton pack, this is probably the best way for you if you're a newbie. It's a lot easier. It takes the guesswork out of things. And honestly, you can just use tape, you can use double-sided tape, 3M double-sided tape, or some Velcro, or a hot glue gun, probably very common that most people use. And all you gotta do is just apply some hot glue to the back and mount it wherever you think is best for your electronics. And just go ahead and fit everything in until you find a placement that is suitable for you. For the powercell, you can purchase or 3D print the GPStar mount, and you can just hot glue the back of it there. The things to consider when you are mounting this is the length of the wires. So for example, the powercell and audio board wires are fairly short. So you're gonna want those to be somewhere nearby your main board here. Same goes for the speaker wire. So these are just some things to consider before you permanently mount things. You wanna test out the wire lengths and make sure that everything can reach wherever it needs to go. And depending how heavy your battery is, it's just a 3000 milliamp Talentcell battery, you might want to put this to the motherboard instead. But again, if you can try, you can just probably use some Velcro or double-sided tape and put that to your shell. Speakers I would recommend these mounting to your motherboard. Depending on the size, they can get pretty heavy, but I have seen it done on the inside of a shell. You would have to screw it in though, for sure. No tape or hot glue is going to be enough for that. I've seen it done here on the back of a Q-Pack before. Another brave soul actually put some screws up in here and mounted it that way. But like I said, it's probably best to mount it to the inside of a motherboard. I do have a simple speaker hole grill that I made up that you can drill the holes into your back of your motherboard before you mount these on top. And if you want to know how this is done, I will demonstrate this later on. And then for the hose connector, you can just simply screw it in there. You might have to cut out a proper size hole for the back here, or if your holes already came too big, then you might need to fill this with some putty or something, sand it down, and then drill the holes in. Okay, so that's just a quick run through of mounting the electronics to the inside of the pack. Apologies for not actually demonstrating it, just because that's not the method I am going to go with for my personal pack here. But it gives you, but I think the idea is pretty straightforward. So instead of mounting things to the pack, we're going to move ahead and make things more complicated and difficult for our lives and mount things to the back of the motherboard. So why is this difficult? It depends a lot on what kind of shell you have. So I have a Q-Pack here. There's not a lot of room to work with. There's a lot of areas that have these walls here, as opposed to fiberglass shells or some other shells that have a lot more open space, make things easier. So it takes a lot of guesswork and trial and error. So the most difficult ones, at least for me to figure out for placement, is the cyclotron and the powercell LEDs, especially this one. There's not a lot of space for the Q-Pack for this, so I have to be very careful. I thought maybe starting with these difficult ones makes most sense, but let's go ahead and start some easier ones. So the main board here, I've already decided, I already played around with things, and I decided that it would best go here, at least for me. It's close to the powercell. I thought about placing it here, but I'm planning to use an attenuator, and I want to put that attenuator's location there. So the first thing you want to do is move this aside, bring your shell back, and you're just going to do a kind of a dry test to see where things fit best for you. So you want to take all your electronics and find the best places to put things. For my battery choice, I'm just going to use this old school blue brick battery. See, this goes here. So yeah, it's going to look something like this for me. So moving back to the shell, we're just going to start with one electronic piece at a time. So for the main board, it was here. So that corresponds to here on my motherboard. And so you put that there, and then you want to drop your shell back on and make sure it fits. Okay, so that's sitting flush against my motherboard. So I know that is good. And then when you're removing it, make sure you do it carefully, so not as to shake the motherboard and displace it. Otherwise, it would defeat the purpose. And if that's okay, then grab a marker and hold it still and just mark exactly where it is. So as you can see here, I actually marked it here before, but now I'm putting back on, trying again. I think it's actually more to this way. So that's why I had to redo that. So you're just gonna wanna do that with the rest of your electronics. As you see here, I've already marked it up like crazy, doing a lot of tests. So I had my audio board there, for example. I have my speaker here, board. My battery goes here, my amp, power cell, and cyclotron, and my other speaker goes somewhere there. And once I got this all laid out, took all my wires, and I made sure that everything can reach and connect. All right, so how are we going to attach these to the motherboard? Well, obviously there are holes in the back here, and you can just drill some holes and mount them via some screws. But for the electronics and the battery, I am planning to just use Velcro. I think these are enough. I don't want to drill too many holes in my motherboard. And I think it should be enough for the battery as well. We've done that with the Hazlitt pack with the 3000 milliamp battery, and that held up well. I had done my research, and on GB Fans, back in the day, a lot of people using this battery, they would just use some 3M double-side tape, and it's been enough apparently. But it's up to you. If you prefer mounting these, just go ahead and screw it in. It is more secure after all. Obviously though, for the speaker, cyclotron, and the power cell, I will be drilling holes for that. So you know what? Let's go ahead and go do that next. So this is the Son of a Gun Props power cell mounting kit. Comes in 2 pieces and some nuts and screws. So the first thing you want to do is take the base plate here. And as you can see, these slots here are perfect for some nuts to slide up and down. And then take the actual power cell mount here, line it up, flip it around, and using your M3 screw, you can just screw that in. Right now, it doesn't need to be tight. You want it to be just tight enough that it can still go up and down, but not too loose that it will fall downwards on its own. So that one's fine. So let's do the other one. Okay, now mounting the power cell LED. For my pack, I plan to have the feet facing outwards on the pack. So I want the wire to be facing inwards, so it's going to go like that. There are 4 mounting holes here, but 2 should be enough. And just using some M3 screws. And then for the feet, they are actually going to be using some M4 mounting screws. And as you can see, this is fully adjustable. Once you mount these, if you need to make some slight adjustment, these can go back and forth a bit. The mount here can go up and down depending on your height. And then of course, side to side. And for the height, as you can see here, let me get the light on it. There are some marking, so help you line these up. And remember, I mean, if you find this, once you find the sweet spot, you can always take a silver pen marker and draw the line on that so you can remember where it goes. And then I'm just gonna insert the cable here. And if you need to, there are 2 wider slots here that you can put the cable through. And so it's tucked in nicely. So yeah, that's a power cell. Let's move on to the cyclotron. So the first thing you're going to do is take the base here. These are the 2 top ones, 2 bottom ones, and the bypass board goes here if you need it. And you take your legs here, and that just slides in from the top. This one as well. So you can either put these on the sides, or if you prefer, they can go here, top and bottom. So that's up to you. Flipping it over. Again, M3 screws, just 2 of them on each side. Again, not too tight, just enough that I can still move up and down. So this one's a little too tight. Yeah, that should be fine. Maybe a little bit looser actually. And then we're gonna do the other side, same thing. Okay, so these are considered Z-axis mounts. The next thing we want are the Y-axis mounts. And these ones are designed to fit specifically for each of these 4 quadrants. And how you know you got the right one is when you place one here, there's a little angle groove slot right there. And this should be able to just slide in there. So you can see that. It should fit right in. And the other indicator is that it should be flush on the corner here. So that's where this one goes. So then you just need to take one M3 screw and see there's a hole right there. And you just drop that in. And for now, don't tighten it. You want it loose still. Maybe just barely enough that it prevents it from moving, but still enough that you can move back and forth. Okay, next up, we're going to install these X-axis mounts. So these are the Y ones here. these are the X ones that go this way. So similar to the other one, I'll flip it this way. Just gotta make sure that the little slit there, the angle slit, matches up with the X-axis mount. And if you line them up, the corner should be flush with this one, like that. And this is going to be installed with another M3 screw. And we'll just do the rest. Okay, and for the last thing are some optional cones. So it's up to you if you want to put these on or not. Just gotta look at the flat side here when you're lining these up to figure out which one goes where. Flat side here, flat side here, and they just snap on, just like that. And for the cyclotron puck LEDs, we're not gonna deal with these just yet. Put those aside for now, and let's go take this back over to the pack. Okay, so back to the pack, flip it over. And ideally, you don't have your cyclotron lenses installed just yet. It'll be easier to adjust it later on if you don't have these on yet. But for right now, we're gonna need to pop these in. Then take your mount. And then we're gonna take a ruler. And what we're trying to figure out right now is just how high up it should go. So I'm gonna stick my ruler on the end here. So a nice straight line. And run it through, and looks like that hits it. So this needs to be a little bit lower. Okay, yeah, and then that just clears it, looks like. So I'm gonna take a look at the marks here. So it looks like the most ideal spot for me is to have it almost all the way bottom at this notch right there. And then I'm gonna line up this side as well. Okay, and yeah, that looks like it's pretty good to me. So now I can go ahead and tighten these screws. Okay, so now we're gonna put the shell away. Turn our attention back to the motherboard. And now you're just gonna place this down somewhere here. And like I said, remember when I said about the lenses? Yeah, you're gonna wanna take these back out, pop your shell on, and then from the lenses, you can make the adjustments to see how, and try to line it up as best as you can. It doesn't have to be perfect because we can make the micro adjustments later on. Okay, so, I mean, that looks good, close enough. So now we're gonna take off the shell very carefully, trying not to move it or bump it at all. And then take your Sharpie and do the same thing as the other stuff and mark where you want it to go. So I've already marked mine. And then you also want to now mark where the holes you're planning to drill are going to be. So I'm going to put one there, put a dot in there. Okay, so now it looks like that. And we're going to go ahead and drill these holes. So starting with a pilot hole. Okay, and next we're going to take it up a notch to the actual size of the drill bit that we need to use. Okay, and all done. Just to test it out again, here is an M4 screw, and looks like it just drops in perfectly. All right, so now we're ready to mount this baby. So I'm gonna take some M4 screws and some M4 nuts here. And if you can see, they're designed so that the nut should be able to drop right in, and it won't be able to turn either. So you don't need to hold this one in place. These mounts here already hold them in place for you. All right, so I dropped a nut in each one of these. So go ahead and line them up. Take my M4 screw. I'm going from the bottom underneath. All right, so I just left these finger tight for now because I just want to do one last check with the shell, make sure it fits. Okay. Looks like it can move down just a little bit more. I'm gonna slide them as much as I can. Let's try this again. Okay, that fits a lot better now. So just looking straight down, I think I could kind of see that there's some modifications that needs to be done. And I'm actually gonna cheat a little bit. I actually modified my version so the lid comes off. So I don't have to take off the whole shell. But I think for now, it's best not to do the minor adjustments just yet. That's because you can't really tell until you have the light shining. So we're gonna save this part to the very end once we get everything hooked up, and then we'll take a look that way. All right, so now we are going to move on to the power cell. Okay, so for this one, I think I mentioned earlier that it is a bit trickier for me. The Q-Pack, it doesn't have a lot of room to work with inside the cavity here. It like fits, and it doesn't have much room to move. It's especially with this cable here. So position is quite essential for this part. I have it mounted like this with the cable pointing inwards and the feet pointing outwards. And because there isn't much room in the Q-Pack, it's really easy to knock this over when you're just testing it out. So I find that putting some blue tape will definitely help hold it in place while you're doing that. Okay, so not bad. This looks like it's slightly angled. So I just have to make some adjustments there. Try this again. Okay, that's actually looking, that's looking a lot better. I think we found the spot. It's still a little angled a little bit, but that's okay. The feet mounts can be adjusted back and forth a little bit. So once you're done that, you just want to get your marker out. Go ahead and hold it in place and then carefully take off the tape and then mark around the feet. And mine is going to be somewhere like there. So let's go ahead and mark it. Okay, and let's go back to drilling. And once again, there's a little cavity that fits the nut perfectly and prevents it from spinning. It's another M4 screw. Okay, that looks a little bit more centered. No, I'm not gonna pick that. That's fine. Yeah? Okay, so let's go with that. That's all done now. Now I'm just gonna have to tighten the screws underneath and we're good to go. And then so for the next bit here, let's go ahead and move on to the speakers. This one is gonna go right here. I already pre-planned these and test them out. This one should go somewhere around here. And just to be absolutely sure, just gonna make sure that speaker at the top here fits. Okay, yep, that looks like it fits. So I am gonna go ahead and start drilling. And on the back side here, took another slightly larger drill bit to countersunk this end so it's nice and smooth. Doesn't hurt my hands. Nothing's gonna cut me. Okay, so let's go ahead and mount these speakers. So for the speakers, I'll be using the M4 bolts again. And I 3D printed a couple of these small spacers. Okay, and so now this is how it looks with the spacers on. All right, and now let's test out the shell again, make sure it fits. Perfect, all good. Okay, so now that the speakers are mounted, the power cell, the cyclotron, we got those, the most difficult ones out of the way. So let's go ahead and mount the rest of the electronics. Alrighty, as I mentioned, for these components, we are going to use some Velcro. Okay. And sorry about the angle, but I just did a quick test to make sure it fits, and it looks like it does. I would just assume from now on that I'm testing after every equipment, so we don't have to keep showing you this. All right, so now let's move on to the battery. I got 3 different batteries here, 2 Talentcells and a blue brick. It doesn't matter which one you use, but it does matter on your level of soldering and just a basic understanding of electronics and all that. And if you are a complete noob or just want to keep things simple, the easiest way is to just mount it to the inside of the Alice, between the Alice frame and the motherboard. You can use Velcro, you can use some zip ties, drill some holes and use some zip ties. You can use, I don't know, a 3D printed mount or something. Doesn't matter, up to you. You can nice and hidden in the back here. And the great thing is you don't need to modify it. You just need to turn on when you need to. And when you're charging, you just unplug it, plug in your charger, and that's it. You just need to drill 1 hole and then just run the power wire out and connect it to the amp, and that's it. Easy peasy. But if you're like me, you want to make things difficult, I will demonstrate quickly with this battery how I'm planning to connect mine with some extra switches and all that stuff. But for the sake of wiring this up and making sure it works, I'm just going to leave the battery as is, and I'm just going to mount it right there. So let's go ahead and start wiring things up, starting with the cyclotron. Okay, so the cyclotron LEDs. Let's start off with the bypass board here. This is, of course, if your Proton pack doesn't have the inner cake. You don't need a bypass board if that's the case. But for most shells, you're going to have the non-removable cyclotron lids. So yeah, most of you will be using one of these. All right, so first one, let's start with 5 volt. That's where the red cable will go. And next will be the yellow one that goes into DN. And finally, black goes into ground. Give it a bit of a tug to make sure it's secure. Also, a very important note that when you're clamping down on these wires, make sure you're clamping down on the exposed ends here. And that applies to these cyclotron pucks as well. You don't want to push this in too deep so that it clamps down on the wire sleeve here. Otherwise, your connection will be no good. So yeah, important safety tip. Okay, so let's take this bypass board and you can feed it through the circle here. And then this bypass board, it can just simply snap in. It's just a pressure fit. It holds pretty well, so you don't need any hot glue or anything. All right, and then next grab a cyclotron puck. You can start in whichever spot you want, so long as it goes clockwise. That's the most important thing. Do not wire it this way. It has to go clockwise. For me, I'm going to decide to start all the way at the bottom left. That way my end filter will end with the LED closest to it. All right, so the first one, you want to look at the terminal that says D in. That's the one we're going to start with. So the red will go into the left here where it says 5 volts. And then the yellow goes into D in. And then the black goes to ground. Are they clamped down on the exposed part or the sleeve? Looks good to me. Give it a bit of tug to make sure it's secure. And make sure you do these 2 double checks for every single wire that you connect. Okay, next let's grab another set. Drop it in the hole. And then finish this up with the other terminal and the one that says D out. So same thing, red goes into 5 volt. Yellow goes into D out. And black goes to ground. Okay, and then just go ahead and push that through. And you're probably going to need to make some rotational adjustments to this later on, so you don't have to secure the puck just yet. But if you want, we're going to be using 4 M3 screws on each of these to tighten it and keep it in place. Clamp it with your other hand. And just tighten it a little bit for now, just to make sure it doesn't pop out. Okay, so again, clockwise. So we're going to take our wires and we're going to go up into this hole here. And which side are we connecting to this time? That's right, it's going to go into D in. So are you seeing the pattern now? D out, D in. D out, D in. D out, D in. Yeah, you get it. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward, so I don't think I need to show you the rest. So why don't you go ahead and just finish the rest. Okay, and last but not least, we'll be connecting the end filter vent light. Okay, and that is it. So let's go take this back over to the pack. Okay, so I've already reconnected the cyclotron back to the pack while you guys weren't looking. I'm just gonna tuck the LED away just for now in here. For connecting the wires, I'll be using a lot of these zip tie mounts. I got a pack of zip ties here. And what I'll probably be using instead of zip ties is some twist ties, just so it's not permanent. And for routing the Q pack, it's going to be a little difficult because there's not a lot of space and there's very specific routing. So what I did was take a picture of the motherboard with all the components and then another picture of the inside of my shell. Threw them into a photo editing software and I just try and match it up as best as possible. And yeah, just looking at it this way, I'm going to try to judge best as can where the wires go. So I'm just going to start off with the power cable here. And this is the power cable that comes with your GPStar kit, and you'll probably be using this since I'm assuming most of you will have a Talentcell battery. That'll just plug in there. So assuming that is the battery, and this black and white, this needs to plug into the 12 volt in here. But in my case, since I'm using a blue brick battery, I'm just using 2 cables like this to extend it a little bit longer. And this one will plug into one of the 12 volt ports here or here. Okay, now looking at my photoshopped photo, looks like this will need to route outwards somewhere around here. So what I'm going to do is take one of these zip tie mounts and I'm going to pop that right in between there. Yeah, that should do it, I hope. I'm going to take a zip tie. And then so it looks like this is going to go above the board and enter through here. So I'm probably going to want another zip tie right here and one right here. And then it looks like this is going to need to angle a little bit downwards and enter through here. Okay, and then to leave this part as is. All right, so what's the next one? Now why don't we do the power cell here? Get this one out of the way. So I see I have it inserted in through there, so I'm gonna have it wrap around. And this plugs into here, and the white one labeled powercell. Next up, we have the audio cable. Again, this is a very close connection, so let's shorten this as much as we can. That should be fine. So that goes in here, and this goes into the gray one here labeled GPStar audio. All right, and now let's take our audio cables and we're going to connect this speaker here. And this is going to connect right into there. So let's go follow along this path here. Make note the polarity of the speaker. So the positive speaker is denoted by a tiny little red mark. So this right speaker here is the positive wire. And so when you're on the amp, make sure that positive wire is plugging into R positive. And of course, the other wire is the negative wire, and that goes into R negative. And while we're at it, we might as well go ahead and connect this other speaker and finish this guy up as well. And we're going to take these and plug it into the other speaker terminal. So let's go ahead and start with the audio cable here. That goes in here. All right, so I already made my first error. With the auxiliary cable plugged in, this no longer quite fits here. So we're gonna have to find a new location for it. So what I did is instead, I decided to relocate it over here. Honestly, I'm gonna do something else different from this during one of my Jono mods. So it really doesn't matter, but for now, I'm gonna put that there. And then we're gonna take our audio cable. That one goes into the auxiliary port. And then the other end connects to the amp way into this little corner here. Right there. And then we're just gonna tidy this up a little bit. Okay, now let's plug in our cyclotron. So we're gonna take this cable here, and this will connect to the bypass board. And then we're gonna route it around, same thing. And it's a little long, so we can try to tie it up here. And then this goes into the red one right there next to the white powercell. It's labeled cyclotron, easy peasy, not rocket science. Okay, and next go retrieve your SD card. And then we're gonna slot that into the audio board. And then I almost forgot, we need the power cable to power the board. So this is gonna go into the yellow one at the bottom here, labeled power. And then over here, this plugs into one of the 5-volt ports. So there are many here to choose from, so it doesn't really matter which one. I'm gonna just go ahead and plug it into the one of the ones back here. And before we test, we just need to do 2 more connections, and that is the volume coder and the ion switch. Drill a hole big enough in your pack that this fits through. I'm gonna take off the nut here and the washer. Take your cable and plug it in first. Then flipping over to the inside, we are going to drop it into the hole like this. And flipping it back over. And with my left hand, I'm holding it in place. I'm gonna drop the washer on and start tightening the nut. Okay, to test if you tighten it well enough, you can flip it over and just start turning the knob. And if the inside PCB doesn't move, then you've done a good job. Now with your rotary encoder, the way to hold in place is with a small grub screw. So I believe this is M2. And so you gotta make sure you have a hole. There's actually 2 hole slots here, so you can use 2 if you need to. And I think I'm gonna want to attach this to the flat part of the rotary encoder. So I'm gonna put it in this way. And then I'm gonna start tightening it. give it a few turns. I'm going to turn it right there to see if that's spun. Okay, good. That looks like it worked. Going to tighten it a bit more. And then that's it. So now you'll notice that cable here has a connector in between. And that is so if you're mounting to the motherboard, you can quickly disconnect your shell when you're taking things apart or not. And I already have here taped up an iron arm switch that I will be connecting to the motherboard. Okay, so the volume encoder switch, that will attach right here in the purple one where it says volume. And then the iron arm switch will be plugged in right there. This one, this white one here. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that and test it out. Okay, so turn on the pack. Looks good. Hit the switch. Okay, cyclotron LEDs are looking fine. Power cell is inverted, but that's okay. We can change that in the settings. Test out the volume encoder. Yep, plenty loud. Okay, so how do we fix this? Well, let's go ahead and connect to our new GPStar 2 Wi-Fi board and yeah, change that up. Head over to the GPStar website, click on support and downloads, scroll down to latest firmware releases. And if you don't know what firmware you're on, just go ahead and download the latest one. So we are installing the GPStar 2 firmware, so make sure you download that one. And once you're done, head over to your Wi-Fi, again on your PC or phone. And you want to connect to the Wi-Fi called GPStar Pack 2. And when it asks you for a password, the password is 555-2368. You can change this later in the settings. Now in your browser, type in gpstar_pack2.local. And I'll bring up this page here. We're going to click on the right tab and then click Update Proton Pack Firmware. And then click Select File and select the file that you just downloaded. Let that finish update. Updating, done. Okay, now that that's done, you can go back to the main page. Click the right tab again, and this time click on Proton Pack Settings. Scroll down. But the main thing we want to do is down in the power cell options, we want to turn on invert power cell animation. Then update, okay. Now go ahead and turn on your pack again, and you should get the correct power cell sequence. All right, guys, let's finish off with the hose now. Okay, so take your Klinko connector here, and obviously if you're mounting to the shell, you just need to drill a hole big enough to fit this in. And then you can just use the screws that came with your Klinko connector and then just mount it to the shell. Easy peasy. But if you're mounting to the motherboard, then we're gonna be using this Klinko connector mount, and that will go somewhere around there. So what you need to do first though, is you're gonna line up with your shell. And I'm not gonna do it here, but I'll just explain it. You just gotta obviously mark around it and then cut off the available space that's needed. And then with the shell mounted to your motherboard, and because this can shift back and forth, I do suggest you screw this in. Go ahead and slide this piece into the cutout that you had. So I'm gonna reverse it, just pretend that this is cut out and I'm pushed in, but I'm just gonna hold it this way for demonstration purposes. And then using a piece of tape or just, I don't know, a pen or marker, mark the sides of where the location is. And then where you mark the two sides, line it up with that. Take a marker and mark the two holes and start drilling. And this mount will be connected with some M4 screws. Okay, and then take your Klinko connector and feed the wires through the hole. And then take your screws and go ahead and screw those in. Okay, now we're gonna take our wires. So starting with the data connection, which is this one here, the green and yellow. And we'll run along the same path. And that will go right there, the purple one, which says Neutrona 1, RX1, TX1. And then the power cable just connects to the one right next to it. If you're running a stock Hasbro and you're using a GPStar Lite, you'll be wanting to connect that power cable to this spot in here instead. And then just pop your shell back on, and that's it for the pack. All right, let's finish up the holes. So you got your loom connector, your Klinko connector, and your Nutric connector here. So take your Klinko connector and just run it through the loom holes. And then take the top cap of your Nutric connector that goes through here. And then the white piece goes through there. And then we're gonna take this piece and we're gonna start wiring these in. And starting with the power connection, we're gonna start the red one. You'll see that these are very faintly labeled. You wanna look for the one that says, come on, 1 positive. And then you will need a T8 Torx screw, the ones that look like a star. And then you just twist to clamp it down. Again, make sure that it's clamping down on the exposed part, not the wire sheathing. Okay, next we're gonna go with the black one, and that goes into 1 negative. And then the blue or green or turquoise or whatever that is, that goes into 2 negative. And then the yellow goes into 2 positive. Okay, double check your connection, make sure it's okay. So then you want to take this piece, and then you'll see there are 2 notches here. You want to line up this wider one with the widest notch on here, so it should be right there. Okay, pull it all the way through. Okay, and then line up these 2 notches with the key in there. It shouldn't twist, it should just slide right in like that. And you know you see it properly when the white end goes all the way in up to there. If it's sticking a little bit more, then you should double check some things because it's not pushed in all the way. So then all you do is just twist it and you're done. Push and twist at the same time. To connect the loom holes, it's recommended to use something strong like duct tape first. So go over it with duct tape. And then afterwards, you can complete the aesthetic by going over that with some electrical tape. And then you want to do that with this end too. Same thing. Go over it with some duct tape and then electrical tape. That's it, you're all done. Take your hose and plug it in. The end filter LED, well, you can, this is going to be up to you. I'm assuming most of you are going to have a smoke kit. So whatever smoke kit you install here, you can mount it whichever way you want. That's up to you. And then for the installation of the wand components, that will be in another video. And once you are done, all you gotta do is plug this one in and your pack is ready to go. All right, let's go on to some of my personalized mods for this pack. Okay, now it's time to focus on modifying the battery to have it installed internally and have an outside switch and charger. So as you know, I'm going to be using the blue brick battery, but since most of you probably have a Talentcell, I will use this for demonstration purposes. So for the Talentcell, we're going to need to open this up first. And there are simply 6 screws that you need to unscrew and then take apart. And when you open up, it will be empty because you got scammed. No, just kidding. I already did it. So it's going to look something like this. Sorry, I'm just refilming some parts so that my footage might go back and forth and look a little different, but it's all gonna be the same. So just a black and red wire that's connected to the battery. On the inside of a 3000 milliamp battery, same thing, just different color. A common misconception that people have is that they think that they have to wire up the black wire, which is the ground wire usually, to this, and the red one to this, but that's not how these things work. Just imagine that this is one continuous wire, and all we want to do is cause a break in between and be able to decide whether we want this connected or not. So we're not going to be touching the black wire, the ground wire. All we're doing is causing a break in the red wire. So the first thing, you probably already know that when you're charging the battery, plugging this side into the wall, it needs to be turned on, right? Okay, so remember that. Charge has to be on. And okay, so what do we want to do? we want to be able to use a switch. So if I say I flip this up, that will turn on the pack electronics and turn on this battery. But if I flip it down, it will only turn on the battery and not the electronics. So we can keep that isolated for when we're charging it. So how do we do that? So for the switch that I want to use, this is an on, off, and on switch, as denoted by this. I think one person in our community had this on backwards and it was called a no-no switch. That was funny. This is called a DP-DT switch. So as you see, there are 6 terminals here. What this does is when I flip it one way, it's going to make a connection between these two. So let's say the battery, but also a separate component. So these two, say the pack. It is essentially the same as having 2 of these switches combined into one. Okay? Okay, so turning our attention back to this. So there's already a switch here, but we want to use this switch. Luckily, all we have to do is solder a couple wires to these 2 prongs here and connect it to this. And on a 3000 milliamp battery, same thing. The prongs are right there, these 2. So I'm going to let you figure out where you can put your battery in your pack and your switch, and that'll determine the length of your wire. Okay, so let's do some soldering. So I'm going to use some green wires for this, just to differentiate the colors. So we'll go ahead and solder these wires to the prongs here. Like so. And then now we're going to solder this to the switch. Don't forget to apply some heat shrink tubing to this first before you solder it. I'm just not doing it for demonstration purposes, but when you're doing it, don't forget to do that. Okay, so now that we're all done, what do? We are just essentially piggybacking off this switch here with the 2 wires. So you're going to leave the switch off from now on. You're never going to turn this one on. And let's test it out, see if this one turns it on. All right, light is green, battery works. So what this means is if I connect the GPStar trunk to this side, it will turn on both the battery and the pack. So what about charging? So what I want to do now is when I switch down, it also turns on just the battery, but not the pack. So now we need to make a connection between this prong and this prong so that no matter what, up and down, it turns on the battery. Okay, so all I did here was just put a little jumper wire to connect these 2. So now, if I go up like before, turns on the battery as expected. But when I also go down, it also turns on the battery. And then when I go to the middle, then it turns it off. So now we got the battery fully connected and all the way. Let's move on to the pack. Okay, so we got our amp here, and then we got a similar looking wire, a power wire that came with your kit. So normally you're gonna connect these to the 12 volt terminal on the amp and plug this into the battery. So we're gonna do something similar. So let's go ahead, plug that into the barrel jack. So we're going to take our ground wire, and that's going to the negative terminal, which is on the right side here. And then normally you're going to plug in the positive wire to this terminal. But instead, because we want to switch, we're going to plug it into the other side, middle one, right there. And when you're soldering, be careful not to touch the other terminals with your soldering iron, because that can create a connection. Like so. Okay, but now we need to still complete the connection to the amp. So what do? Okay, we're gonna take another wire and we are going to solder it to this bottom terminal here. And then the other end simply just goes into the positive terminal on the amp. Okay, now we can test this out. First I'm gonna do is add a shunt to the LED so that the LED turns on so we know it works. Fire on the switch. Hope I don't die. Oops. Okay, and then it works. So that turned both the battery and the amp on. So now what happens if I go the other way? Only the battery comes on and the board is off. Exactly what we want. And then in the middle, turns everything off. And then for the charging, you're just gonna need to get an external charging port that has the black and red wires. And what we're gonna do is take the ground wire, and that's just gonna plug into here along with the other ground wire. So you're gonna need to make some room for his little buddy here. Come on, get in there, you fat. Okay, so I couldn't fit both of them in, so I just soldered them together. And I'm just gonna, so then I can just stick one end in. Okay, so now that the ground is connected to the rest of the ground, we can take the positive end, and that will go right here. So you can see no ground wires are coming to the switch. All the switch does is making breaks and connections between the positive wire. That's it. Okay, so now when we want to charge the battery, we will flip this switch down to turn only the battery, and then take your charger and plug it in. And then, yeah, take my word for it, it should start charging. Usually the wall charger is green, and then once you plug it in, it'll most likely turn red because you're probably low on juice. And then once it's fully charged, this will turn green again. Okay, and that's it. So now you can decide if you want to put this back into the case. You can pop this back up here, and then just have the wires sticking out and mount it to your shell that way. Or you can just mount these separately if you like. There is a gentleman in the GB community that created a mount for this piece. I'll link it in the description. And then for the charging port and the switch, obviously drill a hole in your motherboard and just screw those on. So I'm not going to demonstrate on the blue brick. It's more or less the same kind of thing. And then I'm just going to do this off screen. I'm going to mount this and we'll see what it looks like. Okay, so here it is, all completed. Soldered just like I demonstrated for you. So the switch, I have it on the inside of my Alex frame like this. And I think I should be able to, when I wear this pack, I should be able to reach that. And then there's the charger. Okay, and that all just connects to the battery up there. So when I flip it on, so I'm gonna flip it up. There you go. Electronics turn on, all good. I'll flip it down. There's no light indicator because I removed that LED from the battery, but you can take my word for it that the battery is on. When I flip it the other way, in the middle, it's off. And while I have you here, I just went ahead and did all the other mods that I was talking about. And I didn't show you how I did it because it's literally just soldering wires. So for example, my audio board, I moved it from here to here. Reason being is, as I mentioned, I have my lid removable. I modified to do that. And so now I can access my SD card when I need to update it. Nice and easy. And yes, if you're, I know what you're thinking, I can use an SD card extender instead and just, run it from where it was and attach it to somewhere here. And it does work, but in my experience, the last one I had on my HasLab pack right there, it actually stopped working at some point. I don't know why. And I had all these audio issues, and I was scratching my head, ripping my hair out, trying to figure out what it was, and turned out the SD card extender became faulty. So this way, I don't have to worry about that problem with it. SD card directly inserted there. Okay, and then the other thing I wanted to show you is when I removed the shell. So I bought this 5-pin quick disconnect connector, and this connects to the volume encoder. So 3 wires go here, and then 2 wires go into the iron arm switch. So now when I take off my shell, I just have to disconnect 1 wire instead of 2 separate ones, just like that. Okay, as mentioned, I'm going a different route with my own hose for this personal pack. I wanted it to look like the 84 style where there's no connectors, just the loom goes from the pack to the wand. However, I don't want to sacrifice the ability to disconnect the wand or disconnect the hose from the pack. So a fellow on the NorCal Ghostbusters Discord group helped me find a link to this, Etsy seller who was sold a product that does exactly that. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this together. Okay, I'm gonna grab this GX16 connector. Tiny screw here that I need to remove. Now allow me access to the inside here. All right, now I'm gonna grab the cables that are gonna go inside the loom holes. And these are gonna eventually need to go through these rings. So let's go ahead and put both of these rings through. And this end of the connector. And then if you see closely, there are labels 1, 2, 3, 4. I think I'm gonna go red for 1 and 2 for black. And then yellow for 3 and, sorry, yellow for 4 and blue for 3. So now we need to solder. Okay, so that's all done. And then we're just gonna pop this back in. All right, so one down, and now I'm just gonna take the other ends of the wire and do the exact same thing with this connector. Okay, now I'm just gonna pop this into the hose, just making sure these two little rings go along with it. Okay, we got both ends on both sides of the tube. So now we can take these pieces. Gonna have the big ring on the left side here and the right, and the small ring on the right. First of all, you'll clamp two of these together. So looks like that. And then we're gonna put this little ring, it's gonna fit over the end of it, holding it together. Okay, and then do the same thing with the big ring. Okay, and when you're done, it'll look like that. So now when this hose goes in, you can see with all that pressure already, it's gonna be hard to pull out. But then if you do pull hard enough, it will still come off. I can't do that right now because I just don't have it connected to this. Okay, see, like that. So now we can access it like this. This goes on, this screws in, this stays on. And now we're just gonna do the same thing to the other end. Okay, and now we need the connector that goes into the pack, and the numbering sequence will be the same. Red's gonna go on number 1. And I forgot to do this on the hose, but we should probably be using some heat shrink tubing. Okay, so that's all done. All right, so I'm just gonna finish up all the soldering, so I need to do the wand. So here I already have a neutral connector installed, so I need to take that out. Okay, and before I solder this one together, I'm gonna have to set this up so this nut just drops right in there. It fits perfectly. And then the other end simply screws on. Okay, so we're gonna do the same thing, and we gotta make sure that the numbers line up with the corresponding wire properly. So red is number 1 and black is number 2. Okay, so now that that's all soldered, we can go put this in and screw it on. Okay, for the pack mount, I've already installed the mount here. This one I just made to fit my Q pack. It's installed the exact same way as the Klinko connector that I showed you earlier. And what we're gonna do is take this nut and it drops right through, just like that. And then we're gonna feed our wires through. And then this just screws into the nut. Like so. Okay, now connect the wires. So we want the power to be connected to the amp. And then this one is gonna feed through. And this plugs into the wand TX RX connector. Okay, let's put this together and see how this looks. All right, so let's go ahead and connect our hose. So, see, this just comes off like that for easy access. Now go on, I'm gonna screw this tight. And then that just goes on like that. Yeah, so that looks pretty good. It looks more or less like just a hose that goes right through, giving it a tug. You gotta pull it pretty hard to get it completely off. You can always tighten it more by, I have electrical tape here. You can always make it even tighter if you want. And then we're gonna do the one side. Slips over, and yeah, that is how this looks. Yeah, you gotta pull. You don't have to pull super hard, but you gotta give it like an actual tug just to get off. But most of the time, unless maybe this gets caught on someone, that will happen. Otherwise, just moving around and stuff, it's not. I don't think it's gonna come off. So yeah, that looks pretty good if you ask me. Now I can maintain the aesthetics of the original pack while still having a quick disconnect from the hose. I love it. And that is all for this video. I know it was a long one, so thank you all for watching, and I hope you guys have fun with this. Take care. Bye.